What if true love was hidden behind a mask? Jack, the youngest son of a television magnate, had grown tired of living in a world where people seemed more interested in his money than in who he really was. The quest for a genuine connection led him to make a risky decision: to disguise himself as a homeless person to observe the contestants in a beauty pageant that would be broadcast by his father's network. For Jack, this was not just a test for the participants, it was a chance to discover if anyone could love him for who he was, not for what he owned. Amidst the glamour and competition, Jack found himself immersed in a universe that felt distant from his reality. As he watched the 27 women from different states competing for the title of Miss, he noticed that many of them were cold and distant, treating him with disdain because of his appearance. Loneliness and vulnerability enveloped him, making him question whether there was truly anyone who cared for him. However, in the midst of this hostile environment, a light began to shine. Amanda, one of the contestants, showed kindness, offering him money and support. But Jack soon discovered that Amanda had a boyfriend, leaving him even more insecure in his quest. Meanwhile, Jack encountered Emily, a scruffy assistant working behind the scenes of the pageant. Unlike the other contestants, Emily treated him with kindness and compassion, offering him not only food but also a bath at her home. Jack felt a strange attraction to her, realizing that even without the usual beauty standards, Emily possessed an inner beauty that captivated him. She made him laugh, and their moments together were filled with simplicity and authenticity, something Jack had never found in his life surrounded by superficiality. As the competition progressed, Jack found himself torn between the allure of Amanda and Fern, another contestant, and the genuine connection he was developing with Emily. His heart was in conflict, and the pressure of the environment exacerbated his anguish. He needed to discover whether appearances truly mattered or if there was a deeper, more authentic path to love. The tension mounted as the eliminations approached, and Jack hesitated to reveal his true identity, fearing it might ruin what he had built with Emily. At the climax of the competition, Jack finally decided to come forward. He stepped onto the stage and, in front of all the contestants and the audience, shared his story. Shock and surprise filled the atmosphere. Although Amanda was crowned the winner, Jack felt disappointed by the superficiality of the other contestants, especially Fern, whom he had considered as a potential partner. Beauty was no longer what attracted him. He realized that what truly mattered was the genuine connection he had found with Emily. By the end of the competition, Jack distanced himself from the expectations that surrounded him and made a decision. He decided he no longer wanted to live in a world where appearance was valued more than the heart. With courage, he sought out Emily, eager to get to know her better and build a relationship based on sincerity and friendship. Jack learned that true beauty lies far beyond appearances and that behind a simple act of kindness, one could find the love they had sought their entire lives. As the competition progressed, Jack found himself increasingly immersed in a world that felt both fascinating and terrifying. The bright lights and loud music created an electrifying atmosphere, but he felt the weight of his decision with every passing moment. The fear of being discovered and the dread that people would not accept him for who he really was made his days long and distressing. He needed to be strong, but with every disdainful look from the other contestants, that strength began to crumble. The eliminations were approaching, and the atmosphere became more competitive. The contestants, who had once seemed like mere faces in a contest, now became rivals. Among them, Amanda and Fern stood out not only for their beauty but for their determination. Both were charismatic and knew how to use their charm to win over the audience. Jack felt a mix of admiration and insecurity, especially when he noticed that Amanda, the woman who had shown him kindness, was caught in a relationship that seemed strong and unbreakable. This discovery made his heart ache, and he began to question whether the connection he felt with her was, in fact, just an illusion. Meanwhile, Emily continued to be a beacon of hope amid the turmoil. She was the only one who treated him with sincerity, without caring about his appearance or status. Conversations with her were refreshing, and Jack felt comfortable sharing his fears and insecurities. But as the competition intensified, he found himself grappling with an internal dilemma. What would Emily think if she knew he wasn't who he claimed to be? And if he revealed himself, would he push her away forever? With each round of the competition, Jack felt the weight of his choices. He wanted to be true, but the fear of losing Emily's friendship paralyzed him. The emotional pressure was immense. He didn't want to disappoint her, but the need to be authentic consumed him. These feelings were intensified by an unexpected situation. During one of the training nights, Fern, who had noticed the connection between Jack and Emily, approached him with a mocking smile. "You know, it's not every day we find such an interesting homeless person around here," Fern said with a sneer. "But I think you should take better care of yourself. You wouldn't want Miss Amanda to see you like this, would you?" Her words cut Jack like a knife. He tried to maintain his composure, but insecurity overwhelmed him. The doubt turned into a knot in his stomach, making him wonder if he was truly worthy of any kind of love or friendship. At the same time, physical challenges began to arise. The long hours of rehearsals and the constant pressure to stay fit were exhausting. Jack was not used to this routine and often felt drained. He found himself fighting the temptation to give up, thinking that perhaps it would be easier to return to his previous life, a life where he didn't have to hide. But then he looked at Emily and remembered what he was risking. The thought of not seeing her smile motivated him to keep going. Meanwhile, a new character entered the scene: Lucas, Amanda's boyfriend. He was a successful businessman, always watching with an analytical gaze as if he were evaluating everyone around him. When Lucas appeared at the pageant events, Jack felt a chill in his stomach. Lucas's charisma was undeniable, and the way he treated Amanda made Jack uneasy. He began to wonder if he could truly compete with someone so successful and confident. Tensions escalated when Lucas, in a moment of apparent kindness, approached Jack. "You're wasting your time here, buddy," Lucas said, looking him up and down. "Maybe you should consider changing your approach. Who knows, a new look might do you good." His words were more than just an insult. They were a painful reminder of the insecurities Jack already carried. He felt his confidence crumble even further. With all these challenges, Jack started to question whether it was worth continuing his search for true love. He felt like an imposter, surrounded by people who seemed far more deserving of love. Each day was a struggle not only against the other contestants but against his own fears and insecurities. However, there was something about his connection with Emily that kept him grounded. Their friendship was a refuge amidst the chaos, and Jack knew he had to face his challenges, not only to find himself but also to discover if true love could exist in such a superficial world. Lucas's presence in the competition only made things worse. He was not just a potential rival, but also a constant reminder of what Jack felt he could never be. Lucas seemed to have it all: charm, wealth, and a confidence that Jack envied. Whenever Lucas approached Amanda, Jack felt like an intruder, a shadow in a world full of light. The way Lucas looked at him, as if assessing his worth, only intensified the insecurity Jack already carried. On a particularly tough day, Jack decided to take a break and went outside for some fresh air. As he walked, he found Emily sitting on a bench, engrossed in a book. When she saw him, she smiled, and Jack felt a wave of relief. Her presence always brought a comfort he couldn't find in anyone else. But even there, amidst the tranquility of the park, he couldn't escape his dark thoughts. "You seem distant, Jack," Emily said, closing the book and looking at him with concern. "Is everything okay?" He hesitated, knowing he couldn't share the whole truth. "I'm just trying to get used to all of this," he replied, forcing a smile. But inside, the battle was fierce. He wanted to be honest, but the fear of losing Emily's friendship held him back from fully opening up. The dilemma consumed him. How could he tell her he felt like an imposter in a competition where everyone seemed to shine? Noticing that something was bothering him, Emily decided to change the subject. "Have you thought about what your life would be like outside of this contest? What do you really want to do?" The question caught her off guard, but it also made Jack reflect. He began to think about his true passions, about how life could be if he weren't trapped in this battle of egos. However, the peace was short-lived. The next day, during a rehearsal, Fern set a trap. She provoked Jack again, trying to unsettle him, and this caused him to lose focus. In trying to redeem himself, he ended up messing up an important choreography, resulting in laughter and whispers among the other contestants. The humiliation was a devastating blow. The feeling of failure spread through his body, and the self-confidence he had been trying to build crumbled in an instant. When night fell, Jack locked himself in his room, struggling against tears. He felt like he was in a dark tunnel with no way out. Loneliness and despair surrounded him, and he began to question whether it was really worth continuing. The idea of giving up seemed tempting, but the memory of Emily's smile kept him tethered to hope. He knew he needed to find a way to rise again. Yet, the next twist was about to happen. During one of the group meetings, Lucas, with his sharp gaze, made an observation that surprised everyone. He suggested that the contestants should team up to form pairs, creating a competitive dynamic that would make things even more challenging. The proposal was tempting, but Jack immediately felt threatened. What would happen if he had to compete directly with Amanda or Fern? He knew the pressure would only increase. The emotional chaos Jack was experiencing began to overflow. He was not only battling the insecurities provoked by Fern and Lucas, but he was also starting to feel an internal frustration. It was as if every step he tried to take towards success was blocked by invisible barriers. He was tired of feeling like a pawn in others' games, tired of being shaped by their perceptions. His friendship with Emily was beginning to complicate. Jack noticed she was getting closer to Amanda, seeking advice about the contest. This made him uneasy. He didn't want to be the reason for their distance, but he also couldn't help the jealousy that was growing inside him. The competition was affecting not only his mental health, but also his relationships. As the eliminations approached, Jack knew he needed to make a decision. He could continue hiding behind a mask, or he could choose to be authentic, even if it meant risking everything. The choice was becoming increasingly clear to him. The journey to find himself would require courage, and he knew that despite all the obstacles, there was still a light in the friendship he shared with Emily. However, the road ahead promised to be filled with challenges and difficult decisions. While Jack grappled with his insecurities and the mounting pressure of the competition, an unexpected event occurred that would change everything. During a rehearsal, when everyone was preparing for an important performance, Fern decided to take the provocation to a new level. With a mischievous smile, she challenged Jack to a dance-off, suggesting he didn't have what it took to stand out. The challenge, which was meant to be a simple jest, quickly turned into a tense atmosphere, with all the competitors watching, eager to see what would happen. The proposal made Jack hesitate. He could refuse and maintain his dignity, but the idea of being considered a coward consumed him. He took a deep breath and accepted the challenge, even knowing it would be a mistake. Deep down, he wanted to prove to himself that he still had worth, that he could stand out amidst those provocations. But as the music began to play, the pressure mounted. The rhythm pulsed in his ears, and his body froze. He remembered all the times he had failed, all the criticism he had received. Insecurity took over, and his mind went blank. When the music reached its climax, Jack tried to execute a complex move, but everything went wrong. He tripped, fell, and hit the floor. The sound of the impact echoed in the awkward silence that followed. Laughter began, and the heat of humiliation rose to his face. He felt small, as if he were being stripped of any dignity he still possessed. The looks of disdain and muffled laughter surrounded him, and he realized that the image he had tried to maintain was crumbling. However, it was in that moment of falling that something surprising happened. Emily, who had been silent until then, stood up and ran to him. She crouched beside him, helping him to his feet. "Jack, don't worry about it. You're amazing. Don't let them bring you down," she said, her words filled with empathy and friendship. Her gaze was full of understanding, and for a brief moment, Jack felt he wasn't alone. But the pain of the fall was not just physical. It was a deep wound to his self-esteem. He pulled away from Emily, feeling as if everything was lost. The competition wasn't just a fight for a prize. It was a battle for acceptance, and in that moment he felt more invisible than ever. The idea of giving up started to look appealing again, but something inside him rebelled. He didn't want to be defined by a single moment of weakness. That night, as Jack sat in his room, the humiliation still weighed on his heart. He looked out the window, watching the stars shining in the sky, and remembered the conversations he had had with Emily about his dreams. He realized there was something more important than the competition itself, the search for his truth. What did he really want? To be seen, to be heard, to be worthy. He knew he needed to reevaluate his choices and what success meant to him. The revelation was like a ray of light in the darkness. Jack understood that he didn't need to prove anything to anyone. True success wasn't about winning the competition, but about being true to himself and valuing the people who truly mattered. He realized that along the way, he had neglected the friendship he had with Emily. He didn't want the competition to destroy that. The desire to rise again began to grow within him. The next day, instead of hiding, Jack decided to face his fears. He approached Emily and apologized for pulling away. "I don't want the competition to ruin our friendship," he said, sincerity in his voice. She smiled and relief washed over her. "I don't want that either, Jack. We're in this together. Let's support each other, no matter what happens." With renewed determination, Jack committed to focusing on his passion for dance rather than letting himself be carried away by provocations and rivalries. He began training more, not just to win, but to enjoy himself and express who he truly was. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but with each rehearsal, he felt a bit more confidence returning. The competition was still filled with challenges, but now Jack was prepared to face them head-on. He learned that true strength comes from within and that even in defeat, he could find the courage to rise again. He was finally ready to dance not just to win, but to find himself, and that made all the difference. After a night of reflection, Jack woke up with a new perspective. He looked in the mirror and saw someone different. He was no longer just an insecure young man in a competitive world. He was a dancer in search of his truth. The humiliation of his fall was still present, but now it served as a reminder that he didn't need to be perfect. He needed to be authentic. This new mindset brought a sense of lightness that he had never felt before. At rehearsal that morning, Jack was nervous but determined. He arrived early, before the other dancers began to arrive. The room was empty, except for the soft echo of his favorite music playing. He allowed himself to feel the music, letting it envelop and guide him. With every movement, he felt freer, as if shedding the chains that had held him back. Dance, instead of being a source of pressure, became a form of expression and liberation. When the others arrived, Jack noticed curious glances and a few giggles, but he didn't care. He focused on his dance, on how his body moved, on the joy he felt while dancing. The change in his posture did not go unnoticed. Emily, who was next to him, smiled when she saw him so engaged. She approached him during a break and said, "You're different, Jack. You're dancing with your heart." He responded with a genuine smile, feeling supported. However, not everything was easy. Fern was still there, ready to provoke. She seized the opportunity to try to destabilize him. During one rehearsal, she approached him with a mocking tone. "Are you still trying to convince yourself that you're a dancer, Jack?" But instead of being shaken, Jack took a deep breath and calmly replied, "I'm dancing for myself, Fern. And that's what matters." His words surprised everyone, including himself. He had found a way to assert himself. Despite his progress, Jack still felt the pressure of the competition looming. Anxiety built up as the presentation date approached. He remembered past failures and how criticism affected him. In moments of solitude, he had to fight against the echo of voices saying he wasn't good enough. One night, while reviewing his steps in the mirror, he had a moment of vulnerability. Tears streamed down his face, but instead of feeling defeated, he decided to write in his journal. The words flowed like the dance he loved, a release of everything that oppressed him. In the following days, Jack began to interact more with the other dancers. He joined some of them for extra rehearsals, creating a new support group. They shared tips, laughter, and even mistakes, becoming a small team. This helped him realize he wasn't alone on this journey. He started to feel like part of something bigger than the competition. Each dance step became a moment of friendship and growth. However, the biggest obstacle was yet to come. In the week of the presentation, Jack injured himself during a rehearsal. A twisted ankle left him worried. The doubt began to echo in his mind again. The fear of not being able to dance, of failing once more, threatened to destabilize all the progress he had made. He had to deal with the frustration and anxiety of not being able to perform. What he had achieved seemed on the verge of collapsing. In a moment of desperation, Jack sought Emily. He needed someone who understood him. They met in a park, where he vented about his fears and insecurities. "What if I can't dance? What if I disappoint everyone again?" Emily listened attentively, and then, with an encouraging smile, said, "Jack, dance is about expression, not perfection. You've come so far, and you don't need to dance for others. Do it for yourself." These words resonated deeply within him. Jack realized that regardless of what happened in the presentation, he had already won in internal battle. He was on a path of self-discovery and acceptance. Deep down, he knew that dance was not just a challenge. It was a way to connect with himself and with others. He returned home with a newfound determination. Jack began doing light exercises, focusing on recovering his ankle, and decided that, regardless of the outcome, he would dance. He had a new mission, not only to showcase his skills but to share his passion and journey with others. He wanted each step to tell a story, his own story. And so, he prepared for the presentation, not just as a competitor but as an artist who was finally ready to shine. Jack was at a pivotal moment in his life. After weeks of rehearsals and facing the pressure of competition, he found himself at a crossroads. The injured ankle was more than a simple physical injury. It was a symbol of his insecurities and deepest fears. What he had always dreaded was about to come true, the possibility of not being able to dance in the presentation he had been looking forward to. The voices of doubt echoed in his mind, threatening to destabilize all the progress he had achieved. Sitting in his room, Jack looked out the window, watching the world outside. The leaves on the trees swayed gently in the wind, and he remembered how, before, every dance movement felt like an extension of his soul. Now, he felt trapped, as if the chains of his insecurities prevented him from flying. The fear of failure consumed him, and the thought of disappointing himself and others left him distressed. But then he remembered Emily's words that had encouraged him in a moment of vulnerability. Dance is about expression, not perfection. These words began to resonate in his mind, and he realized he needed a new perspective. What truly mattered was not the performance itself, but the journey that led him there. He decided that, no matter what happened, he could not let fear paralyze him. With this new determination, Jack began to focus on recovery. He did light exercises, respecting the limits of his body while keeping his mind open and eager to learn. During these rehabilitation moments, he realized he needed to accept help from others. The dancers he had bonded with during extra rehearsals were ready to support him, and the friendships he had developed became a source of strength. That week, his fellow dancers gathered to rehearse. Jack felt welcomed, and the light, fun atmosphere helped ease the tension surrounding him. They laughed together, shared stories, and supported one another. It was a sense of unity he had never experienced before. Dance, which had once felt like a fierce competition, was now transforming into a celebration of friendship and individual expression. As he prepared for the presentation, Jack began to understand that success wasn't just about winning a prize or receiving applause. True success was feeling good about himself, accepting his imperfections, and finding joy in dancing. He realized that by dancing, he could tell his own story and connect with the audience in an authentic way. This new perspective brought a sense of freedom he had never felt before. On the day of the presentation, Jack was nervous but also excited. Looking at the audience, he felt butterflies in his stomach, but instead of letting that paralyze him, he took a deep breath and remembered everything he had learned. He was there not just to compete, but to share his love for dance. When the music began to play, Jack let himself go. Every step, every movement, was an expression of who he truly was. The performance was not perfect, and Jack made a few mistakes. But instead of feeling embarrassed, he smiled. He had danced with his heart, and that was what truly mattered. The audience stood and applauded, but what mattered most to Jack was the feeling of personal accomplishment. He had overcome his fears and allowed himself to be vulnerable. He had transformed. After the performance, his colleagues gathered around him, congratulating him and praising his courage. Jack realized that the friendships he had cultivated helped him grow in ways he had never imagined. He was no longer alone on his journey. He had a community that supported him. The experience taught him valuable lessons about life. Jack learned that failures are not the end but opportunities for growth. He understood that true wealth lies not in material achievements but in the experiences and connections we make along the way. With a new understanding, he moved forward, not just as a dancer, but as a stronger and more confident person, ready to face any challenge life threw his way. On the day of the presentation, the energy in the air was palpable. Jack was backstage, his heart racing, almost as if he wanted to dance before stepping onto the stage. He looked in the mirror and saw a young man facing his insecurities with courage. His ankle still hurt, but now it was a reminder of his journey, not a weight holding him down. He thought of all the weeks of rehearsal, Emily's words, and the laughter shared with his friends. That night was not just about him, it was about all of them. The stage was lit, and the curtains slowly opened, revealing a packed audience. Jack felt the adrenaline surge as his fellow dancers positioned themselves around him. They exchanged encouraging glances, which brought a smile to his face. No one was there just to compete. Everyone was there to express themselves, to show what dance meant to them. As the music started, Jack closed his eyes for a moment, allowing himself to feel each note. When he opened them, he let himself be carried away by the rhythms, moving with the music as if he were part of it. The steps flowed, and he danced not just with his body but with his soul. The pain in his ankle faded amid the intensity of the performance. Each movement was a celebration, and he felt freer than ever. However, the tension increased when, in a moment of pure emotion, he slipped. The world seemed to stop for a second, and a cold feeling settled in his stomach. The fear of failure, of disappointing himself and others, haunted him once again. But instead of letting it bring him down, Jack took a deep breath, remembered the journey that had brought him here, and stood up. The mistake would not be his end. With a determined smile, he continued to dance, incorporating the slip as part of the performance. The audience, noticing his resilience, began to applaud enthusiastically. The music reached its climax, and Jack found himself at the center of the stage, surrounded by his friends. They united in a choreography that had been rehearsed, as well as in moments of improvisation. Instead of worrying about perfection, they surrendered to the joy of dancing. Jack looked at the faces of his peers and saw the same passion reflected back. In that moment, he realized that the true victory was not winning the competition, but the connection they had with one another. At the end of the performance, when the music faded, the audience erupted in applause. Jack took a deep breath, a wide smile lighting up his face. He had overcome his biggest challenge. He had not only danced but had also allowed himself to be vulnerable, which freed him from his insecurities. The audience stood up, and the warmth of the applause felt like a collective embrace, enveloping him in a sense of acceptance and love. After the show, as everyone gathered to celebrate, Jack felt a wave of gratitude. His failures had taught him to be stronger, and the support from his friends showed him the value of togetherness. The friendships he had cultivated were not just a support system, but a source of strength, and he felt blessed to have them by his side. That night, Jack did not just dance. He rediscovered himself. He understood that success is not measured solely in awards or applause, but in the lessons learned and the connections made along the way. Dance became a metaphor for life, full of ups and downs, but always rich in experiences and emotions. As he talked with his friends about the performance, Jack realized that each of them had faced their own struggles. Their stories were not just about dance, but about overcoming challenges, friendship, and growth. He knew that regardless of what the future held, he would not be alone. They would face challenges together, learning and growing with each step. The night ended, but Jack's learning was just beginning. With a new perspective, he felt ready to face not only the challenges of dance but also those of life. The journey that had begun with fear was now marked by hope and courage. Jack had transformed, and this transformation would be his greatest legacy. After the performance, the atmosphere in the dressing room was celebratory. Jack and his friends laughed and shared stories about the funniest and most emotional moments of the show. The adrenaline still surged through their veins, and each of them seemed to shine with a new light. Jack observed the radiant faces of his peers and felt a wave of happiness. They had overcome a significant challenge together, and that had brought them even closer. "You crushed it, Jack," Emily said, hugging him warmly. "That slip? It was just a little touch of emotion. You turned it all into part of the dance." Jack smiled, recalling the moment he slipped. Instead of feeling embarrassed, he now saw it as an opportunity for growth. Dance was not just about being perfect, it was about being authentic. He had learned to embrace his imperfections. "I couldn't have done it without you all," Jack replied, looking around. "Each of you helped me find courage. The performance wasn't just about me, it was about us." The others agreed, and soon the conversation turned into an animated debate about what each of them had learned that night. Dan, who used to be the most nervous before going on stage, admitted, "I realized that fear was just holding me back. When I let myself go with the music, everything flowed." "Exactly," Sarah said. "Dance is a way for us to express ourselves. When we let go of the pressure to be perfect, we find true joy." Jack felt his heart warm at those words. They were all in sync, and he realized that dance had become a means of deep connection among them. As the night progressed, Jack also reflected on his personal journey. He remembered the days when he felt insecure, afraid of not being good enough. The painful ankle was a symbol of his limitations, but now it was just a reminder that he had overcome it. He had learned to get back up after falls, just like in dance. "Do you think we should keep dancing together, even after the competition?" Jack asked, breaking the silence that followed. "Of course," Emily exclaimed. "Dance shouldn't stop here. We can create something even bigger, something that showcases our evolution." Ideas began to flow, and soon they were discussing new choreographies, even the possibility of participating in a dance festival in the city. Jack felt excitement growing within him. The idea of continuing to dance with his friends filled him with hope and enthusiasm. That night, each of them made the decision not to let challenges separate them. Success in the competition was just a step in a long journey. They wanted to grow, explore, and support each other in every movement. When Jack finally got home, he sat on his bed and reflected on everything that had happened. He realized that dance had an incredible power to transform lives. It wasn't just an activity, it was a form of communication, a way to connect with others and with oneself. He remembered his mother's words, who always said that life is like a dance. Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow, but the important thing is to never stop moving. Jack smiled at that thought. He felt ready to face any challenge that might come next, both in dance and in life. What started as a struggle against his insecurities had now become a new opportunity for growth. Jack knew that the journey was just beginning, and he was eager to see where dance would take him. With his friends by his side, he finally felt free to explore every step, every mistake, and every victory. The future shone brightly ahead of him, and Jack was determined to dance through life with courage and joy. Jack's journey had been filled with ups and downs, but by the end of that magical night, he realized that every step he had taken brought him to this moment. He remembered the insecurities that had haunted him, the times he hesitated to dance, and how fear almost kept him from shining. However, through dance, he found a new way to express himself and connect with his friends. The competition was not just a measure of success, it was a celebration of friendship, overcoming obstacles, and personal growth. Reflecting on everything he had learned, Jack understood that true victory was not about being perfect but having the courage to expose himself, make mistakes, and above all, start over. He recalled his mother's words about life being like a dance, where every movement matters, and where the most important thing is the willingness to keep moving even in the face of challenges. The idea of creating new choreographies and participating in festivals ignited a spark of enthusiasm within him. Jack realized that if they continued together, they could explore new horizons, not just in dance but in their lives. The shared experiences throughout their journey had strengthened the bonds between them, and the friendship they cultivated had become a fundamental pillar of their achievements. Each of them had an important role to play, and together they formed an unbeatable group. As Jack snuggled into his bed, he felt a wave of gratitude for having such special friends. They inspired him to be braver and embrace his imperfections. He now understood that dance was a metaphor for life, full of twists, unexpected steps, and sometimes falls. But just like in dance, what truly mattered was the determination to get back up and keep dancing. The night wore on, and the excitement of the performance still echoed in his heart. He felt that every moment he lived had a profound meaning. Dance was not just a hobby, it was a passion that helped him find his voice, connect with others, and discover himself. He realized that the true essence of dance lay in being authentic, expressing oneself without fear, and celebrating every moment. Jack knew that this journey would not end here. He was ready to face new challenges, explore new steps, and live new experiences. And above all, he was excited to do this alongside his friends, with whom he had learned so much. They would go together, not just as dancers but as a family. As he concluded his reflections, Jack made a promise to himself, to never give up on his dreams and always support those he loved. He understood that the wisdom gained throughout his journey was a valuable gift, and that life, just like dance, should be lived with passion and courage. Now, Jack invites you to reflect on your own journey. What steps do you need to take to get closer to your dreams? What have you learned from your falls? Share your experiences in the comments and inspire others to dance their own stories. Together, we can create a space of support and motivation. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as your interaction helps us bring more content like this, filled with inspiration and overcoming challenges. Let's dance through this life together.